The most dangerous giant in the Bible was not the biggest one. The biggest ones, the ones everyone loves to talk about, were so massive that they would never even notice you. You were an ant on the sidewalk to them. You could live your whole life and never cross paths with them. The dangerous ones were smaller, small enough to walk into your city, small enough to rule it, small enough to look you in the eye before deciding what to do with you. Those are the ones this story is about, and those are the ones we hunt in the Nephilim bounty.
Hey Glenn, we're rolling.
Oh, sorry. This is the Oathbreaker. This is going to get its own video, along with every other weapon that we're going to use in the Nephilim bounty world. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. So where do these smaller giants come from? Well, it starts with the fallen angels, the Watchers. They came down, they took human wives, and their children were the first giants, the huge ones, the size of a mountain. But here's what most people miss. It did not stop there. Those giants had children, and every generation, that giant blood got a little thinner, and the giants got a little smaller, until eventually you got something small enough to walk into a city, rule it, and look you in the eye. The mountain-sized ones stayed behind the gates in a world that had already left them behind, but their children came down to the cities, and that is where our story really starts. These are the lords. Second generation. The children, about 15 meters tall. Think of a 5-story building standing up and walking around. This generation of Nephilim, they built cities like this one that we're standing in. They demanded a tribute, and quite frankly, they took whatever they wanted. And they called themselves gods, and the people believed them. They worshiped them, but they were never gods. They were the corrupted children of angels who walked away from heaven. And they got all of the pride, but none of the power to back any of it up. Now, if you know the book of Enoch, you have heard that the giants were 300 cubits tall. We talked about that in our other video that I'll leave a link to. A lot of scholars think that a copyist just added a 0, and they think that the real number might have been closer to 30 cubits. And 30 cubits is about 45 feet, right around 15 meters. And that's what's backed up through the book of Enoch. Something the size of a building that can think and rule and hunt you because it's small enough that it can see you, but big enough that it knows it can't be defeated. Now right here is the part that trips everybody up. How do you even make one of these? How does a human woman give birth to a giant? This is a question that I've received countless times from people. Well, there's really a few things. First of all, that giant blood was already in the line right from the very start, back when the Watchers took human wives. After that point, it just kept passing down, giant to giant, thinning out a little more each generation. And here is the part that most people miss. You do not need a giant and a human woman together to make a giant. Once the blood's already in that line, it's going to carry itself. So the giants could be with giants, but there's still human DNA in there. Second, the Watchers themselves, they could make themselves human size. They were shapeshifters. So that first child was made at human scale. Born like a big baby, not a mountain. But these things never stopped growing. We see that even still today. There's a condition called giantism, which is a condition where the body just keeps on growing and never actually shuts itself off. Now drop that into a world where people were living 900 to 1,000 years. And consider that the giants, that bloodline may have lived longer than that, 2,000 years, 3,000 years. That is a lot of time to grow. And because they grew their whole lives early on, before they became a mountain, a giant at some point in that growth would have been close to our size still. And that was the only time a giant of that stature could have come together with a human. Now, this behavior, you can even see it in nature. Take a lion and you cross it with a tiger, and you get a liger. And that's going to grow bigger than both of its parents. And that's what happens when you mix two different kinds. And the built-in brakes that keeps a body at the normal size are just not there anymore. They're not functioning. So the biggest giants were not just born big, they were also the oldest. And they had the most of that watcher blood in them. And they had the most time to kind of grow into that monstrous size that we talked about in the other video. As the blood thinned out, the giants grew slower, and they didn't live as long. And that is why every single generation through the centuries ended up smaller than the one before it. But maybe you're thinking, that's just an old book. Where is the proof? Well, go to Peru. There's a place called Ollantaytambo, and it's covered in giant stone steps. 17 of them, in fact, climbing straight up the hill. Not steps like the one that you have on your porch. The biggest of them stand around 13 feet tall, 4 meters. A single step would come up well over your head. And nobody has a clean answer as to who those steps were built for. But do the math on a 15-meter giant. That biggest step at 4 meters comes up to about his knees. It's a big step for a man, easy one for legs that are that long. We can even show you. Put a giant our size right there on those steps, and then suddenly they aren't a mystery anymore. They're a staircase built to fit something that actually walked this earth. And the giants, they just kept on getting smaller. There's this third generation that most people have never even heard of. The Greek copies of the book of Enoch give them a name. That generation is called the Elioud. They were maybe 15, 20 feet tall. And in a strange way, these were the most dangerous giants of all. I mean, think about it. You can't be fooled by a giant the size of a mountain. You just run. But one that can walk in your town, learn your language, and smile at you. That is one that can rule you before you even know what it is. The bigger giants, they ruled by force. The Elioud, on the other hand, they ruled by getting close. Every generation, the blood got thinner and the giants got smaller. But the thing is, the hunger, it never shrank. And here is a little something that you're not going to hear in church. All over the world, you're going to find statues of these giants. Huge, built like something you were meant to fear. But one detail is always off. The parts that are needed to make babies are human size. Now, the art historians, they have an answer for that. They say it was all about modesty and self-control. All right, maybe. But think about what we just talked about. A giant that can walk among us. A giant that can breed with us. Built huge everywhere that mattered for war. And human-sized in the one place that mattered for making more of them. And that is how I believe the blood got into people who looked completely normal. Which brings us to the flood. Everybody knows the story. God wipes the earth clean, 8 people on the ark. The bloodline should have ended right there. But how do you wash out a bloodline that is already hiding inside normal-looking people? We know that Noah's 3 sons each had a wife. And the Bible never tells us where those women came from or whose blood they carried. It could have very easily walked right onto the ark, hidden inside someone nobody would ever even suspect. And Genesis actually says it in a line most people skip right over. The giants were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, and also afterward. So let's look at what happened. We started with giants the size of a mountain, and then 15 meters, then close enough to shake your hand, then hidden someone who looks just like you. Generation after generation, smaller and harder to spot. In the flood, it did not end it. It just kept shrinking, all the way down to one last giant who was standing on a battlefield waiting for a shepherd boy with a sling. The whole trail from the flood down to the last giant, that is where we're going to go next. And the ark may not be the only way that the blood survived. There is a much darker theory, and it involves the angels who never got caught. And that growth theory, that part about them never stopping growing, that theory is mine. And if you think I'm wrong, I want to hear it. Tell me about it all in the comments. This is Nephilim Bounty. Subscribe so you don't miss it.